Why would a widow branded a witch become the wife of the richest man around? Some tales feel ripped from frontier legend. A widow despised by an entire town, pelted with stones by children, mocked and manhandled by men. Martha Hale endured it all, silent, stiff-backed, pushing through each day. But one blistering afternoon at the cattle auction, a drop of blood fell from the split in her lip onto the red dust, and fate shifted. Elias Monroe, known as the Black Bull, rode in, dropped the brute who'd struck her, and held out his hand. What he said hit the square like a sentence passed down from on high. Say yes, and no one will ever strike you again. It looked like the start of protection, but in truth it was only a door opening onto a long, dangerous road, with a locked room's secrets and old vendettas that never sleep. Ash Hollow. Its name sounds like a burnt scar across a hard country. Noonday sun here doesn't just blister skin. It scours patience and mercy clean off a soul. Down the red dust main road, sagging porches and leaning saloons cling to life like they're afraid to fall. Hoofbeats echo off the ridges. A cracked church bell coughs somewhere up the street, and the whole town hangs heavy as a storm that won't break. Into that scene walks Martha Hale, slow as if each step were a sentence. Dried blood darkens the corner of her mouth. On her thin finger dangles a rusted ring, the last relic of a marriage rotted away in other people's memories. No wagon, no kin. Just a threadbare shawl thrown over a body pared down to bone. Folks look, but they don't call her by name. They've got others for her. Witch of the Ridge, Drifter's Curse. To them, Martha isn't a person, but a shadow tied to misfortune. Children, spotting her, huddle and snicker, scooping up street pebbles to ping off her back, shrilling, "Witch! The witch is here." Martha doesn't flinch. She tightens the shawl to her cheeks and keeps her eyes on the cracked earth. Stones thud shoulder, spine, leave bruises, but she goes on. Her worn canvas shoes grind through the dust, printing narrow tracks the wind can wipe away any minute. In Ash Hollow, her silence only counts as proof. A woman who doesn't smile, chatter, or bow her head in church must be in league with the devil, they say. And Martha, with those dull, lightless eyes, is the proof they need to feed their fear and their contempt. Her first day, she steps into the general store for flour. The storekeep, belly out, eyes milky, shorts her change. When she quietly points it out, he smirks and slaps her hard enough to blaze her cheek. No one in the store speaks. An old woman mutters, "She had it coming." Martha gathers the sack and leaves without a word. That night, she sleeps out back of the empty smithy, cold threading through the wall slats, pain setting into her bones like needles. It doesn't stop. The next week, in the market, a broad-shouldered man blocks her way. "So the witch needs vegetables?" he sneers. "What for, poison?" Laughter rattles through the crowd, thick, mean laughter that comes easy when there's a victim handy. Martha tries to pass. He hooks a boot and sends her sprawling. Cheers go up like it's sport. She pushes to her knees. Her dress tears, blood soaking through at the shins. Her eyes brim, but she makes no sound. That silence, more than any scream, sets the crowd alight. The more she swallows it, the less human she seems to them, and the freer they feel to hurt her. Day after day it repeats. Shoves, slurs, thrown bottles, filthy names. No hand reaches down. No eye softens. Even the church, supposed refuge for souls, turns its face. Once she slipped into the back pew. Someone had smeared animal dung there. A rustle of snickering swept the room, and the preacher pretended not to see. Martha rose, white-faced, and walked out. The laughter followed her to the door, louder than any blow. Nights, Ash Hollow sleeps under wind scouring the tin roofs, and Martha curls in her corner with a flickering lamp. She doesn't cry, doesn't plead, just fists her hands tight enough to draw blood. Morning after morning, she gets up with a blank face and goes on bearing it. This town isn't built for the meek, and they treat her like quarry. Odd thing is, she survives. She doesn't crumple, doesn't run, doesn't end her life the way rumor says her husband did. She persists, a shadow haunting Ash Hollow. Maybe that stubborn existence, that refusal to vanish, stokes their hatred hottest. They crave the spectacle of her collapse, the proof that a cursed woman must meet a cursed end. Each day she keeps walking that red road. It itches them raw and urges the next cruelty. So on a blistering afternoon, when the sun pours iron on the tin roofs, Martha goes to market again. Same ragged dress, same gaunt frame, same emptied-out eyes. Children tail her, pebbling her back and cackling. A stall woman spits as Martha passes. Ash Hollow is a furnace, and Martha, the widow under a curse, is the coal they toss their scorn upon. But her silence isn't empty. Something inside her has been gathering, ember red under ash, waiting for a wind to make it burn. The cattle auction is where the town packs itself tight, not just to trade stock, but to flaunt, to envy, to cut one another with words. That day the heat is a hammer and dust boils around the penned calves. Shouts, jeers, the gavel clacking on a splintered block. It all mixes with sweat, old whiskey, and livestock stink. Martha's there. Not to buy, but to scrounge a chore, mop a floor, gather a dropped rope, maybe beg some leftover potatoes. In Ash Hollow, her very presence is a burr in the town's hide. Wherever she moves, whispers shear the air. A man named Tucker, kin to the butcher, spots her near the calf pen, eyes far away. A nasty grin splits his face. For men pickled in cheap liquor, dragging a frail widow onto the stage of Sodom, ridicule is like smashing an empty bottle. Easy, noisy, and nobody stops you. He shoulders into her. "Back off, Crow," he barks. "Stand that close and the stock'll drop dead." Martha doesn't answer. She edges aside, clutching the worn shawl. Tucker isn't done. He shoves harder. She goes down hard on packed earth. The buzz swells, then laughter breaks loud as thunder. Blood strings from her lip, mixing with red dust on her chin. She pushes up, and Tucker plants a boot on the hem of her dress, pinning her. "Look," he crows, "the witch tucked in the dirt." Anyone want to see her cry? Martha lifts her face. Hollow eyes, no sound. A tremor shakes her shoulders, but her gaze is cold as winter. The crowd roars, hungry for the tear that will crown their sport. And then, through the racket, a strange hush. People peel back, making room for a tall figure stepping down off the stands. A black brim hides half his face. Dust cakes broad shoulders. Boots land heavy, measured. Elias Monroe, richest man across 3 counties, lord of hundreds of acres and more than 200 head, called the Black Bull for strength and a temper nobody tests. He stops in front of Tucker. No greeting, no bluster. He looks at the blood on Martha's chin, then up at the grinning man. "You done?" His voice is low, gravelly, weighty as stone. Tucker juts his chin, playing big for the crowd. "None of your business, Monroe." She's a witch. Everybody knows it. Elias works a piece of licorice, spits and, without warning, drives a fist straight into Tucker's throat. Clean, quick, true. The man folds without a sound. The square goes dead quiet. Elias turns back, says nothing. He bends and offers Martha a hand. Scarred, calloused, veins standing like roots under skin. Martha hesitates. No one has ever held out a hand like that to her. Faces ring them, hungry for her to grovel or break. She presses her lips and gives the slightest shake of her head. Elias doesn't pull back. He sinks lower, nearly crouched to her level, and speaks slow, each word iron. This isn't charity. Not pity. I need a wife. I'm tired of looking. Say yes, and no one will ever lay a hand on you again. She meets his eyes, dark, still, like a pool that reflects nothing but resolve. Blood threads her mouth, but her voice is clear. All right. One nod, and the whole square freezes. A promise turned to a proposal, naked as a blade. They wed the next evening. No dress, no flowers, no church bell. Just a paper signed by the deputy's shaking pen and a cold ring sliding onto Martha's thin finger. Dusk lays ash gray over the cracked church, and wind scatters the town's whispers. Martha leaves Ash Hollow on the back of Elias's horse, headed for the big spread out in the valley. The road runs long. Wind slaps her face raw, but she doesn't cry. She grips the shawl and lets the dark swallow the light behind her. The house rises in a knife of moon, timber and stone, a fortress of cold. The door groans, sighing out cinders and old dust. Martha steps in, chest tight, but keeps her quiet. Elias says only, "You're here now." He climbs the stairs. Martha stands in the vast room, wind whistling under the eaves. She walks the long hall, fingertips brushing cold wood. At the end she finds a locked door. The iron knob is rusted, yet from the seams a breath of scent leaks, sharp and cloying, sweet and rotten all at once. Lavender. Withered. She goes still, heart pounding. In her memory, lavender belongs to the dead, wreaths on graves, dried bundles over a dying bed. The door is shut tight, but that smell seeps out like a whisper from the dark, hinting at a secret no one has spoken. She tries the knob. Locked. Silence behind it, dense as earth. She steps back. The shawl slips from her shoulders, puddling on the boards. Her eyes darken, not with fear, but with the knowledge that this marriage is no simple bargain. It is the threshold to a room full of ghosts not yet opened. The Monroe Ranch stretched out like a never-ending strip of land, lying quiet among the barren ridges where the wind rattled the wooden fences day and night. To outsiders, it was a monument of wealth. Black cattle plodding slow across the grasslands, barns rising tall as fortress walls, and a 2-story house built of pine and greenstone, larger than anything in Ash Hollow. But to Martha, that expanse wasn't glory. It was silence, so vast it could smother. In those first days she heard nothing but the wind and the hoofbeats of Elias every morning. He rose before dawn, saddled up without a word, tipped his head in place of greeting, and rode off through the gate. By sundown his shadow returned, sweat, leather, dust clinging to him. He passed her without fuss, set his black hat on the peg, and sat on the porch as if the outside world no longer mattered. The strange thing was, in all that distance, Elias never once raised a hand to Martha. No curses, no slaps, none of the contempt she had suffered for years. He did not touch her either, no embraces, no demands, only silence, thick and heavy as a winter quilt pressing on the chest. At night they sat together on the porch. Elias poured 2 glasses of whiskey, slid one her way without a word. Martha lifted it, sipped, the burn sliding down her throat, warming her against the mountain chill. They sat like that. No smiles, no talk, only crickets chirring and the wind moving through the rails. Peaceful in a strange way, not tender, but not cruel. For Martha, that kind of peace was a luxury. She was too used to jeers, shoves, the sting of insults. Here, none of it touched her. Elias, cold and sparing as he was, carried a name that acted like an invisible shield. No one in town dared strike her in the square or pelt her with stones when she passed. They averted their eyes, stepped aside, pretended she wasn't there. But behind her back, The whispers trickled like a hidden spring. She's bewitched him. Had to be the devil. Why else would the black bull take her in? Wait and see. Calamity will come to that ranch. Martha heard it all. No matter how low they muttered, her ears caught every word. But she never turned, never defended herself. In her world, protest only sharpened the knife of contempt. Silence. That was the one weapon she had left. By day, Martha roamed the big house, filling her emptiness with nameless chores. She scrubbed floors, washed curtains, polished windows, till the light flashed back like mirrors. Her hands grew calloused. Her fingers bled from too much scouring, but she kept at it. Every smudge erased was proof she existed, proof she left her mark here. At night, when wind howled outside, she lay downstairs, listening to Elias's boots pace above. He never came near, never sought her, just stalked back and forth like a caged beast. Sometimes she heard a chair creak, the thunk of a knife whittling wood. That was how he passed the hours. This silence wasn't like the town's. Their silence had contempt inside it. This was different. Heavy, suspended, but not vicious. Like a sky with no birdsong, only wind. To Martha, it was foreign and frightening, but at least it didn't bruise. One evening, carrying water to the porch, Elias handed her the familiar glass of whiskey. Moonlight carved his face, showing deep lines around his eyes, the creases of a man who'd weathered more battles than stories told. Martha studied him, waiting for a question, a rebuke, anything. He only gave a faint nod. They drank slowly, letting the night swallow thoughts that never found words. Day after day, that stillness etched itself into her. She no longer flinched at Elias's boots across the floorboards, no longer stiffened when they shared the porch. She learned how to breathe inside the silence, how to drink without shaking, how to gaze at the horizon without fearing mockery. The town still whispered, still marked her as ill omen. But when she walked the market now, none dared step close. They looked, then turned away. Once in a while someone started to taunt, but the mention of Elias, or simply the shadow of the black bull, snuffed it out. It was a strange sort of safety, guarded not by love, but by fear of her husband. Martha knew she wasn't respected, only avoided. But for someone who'd lived under constant ridicule, even avoidance was enough to let her breathe easier. One night, sitting on the porch, she let the words slip out, rough as gravel. "Why did you do it?" Elias didn't look her way, only kept whittling his knife against wood. At length he answered, flat and steady, "I needed a wife. No more, no less." Martha tightened her glass. The answer was blunt to cruelty. Yet oddly, she felt no sting. At least it was truth, not lie, not pretense. That night, staring into the mirror, she saw a woman half strange, half known, no longer the trembling thing humiliated in Ash Hollow, not yet the mistress of this great ranch. But in her eyes, for the first time, there was no pleading, only acceptance, and the faintest glimmer of something that might one day be called strength. The days fell into quiet rhythm, but within that stillness, Martha began noticing odd details tucked in every corner, every row of trees. The house of timber and stone seemed to breathe with ghosts time hadn't swept away. One morning, cleaning the dusty kitchen, her hand snagged a stuck drawer. With effort, she wrenched it open, and a small object rolled out, a silver hairpin, bent and etched with tiny daisies. Not a man's thing. She picked it up, palm trembling. Dust thick on it proved it had been hidden long. Later, wandering the apple orchard behind the house, Martha found a mound of earth. Among the old trees stood a stone worn smooth by rain, no name carved, just the shape of a grave. Weeds veiled it, but the outline was clear. She touched the cold surface, hand shaking. No flowers, no candles, only wind carrying the scent of young apples mixed with the sour rot of soil. She didn't dare ask. But that evening, when Elias returned and sat on the porch, she whispered, "The grave in the orchard. Who is it?" Silence stretched. Elias watched the far field, black cattle shadows dragging long under sunset. At last he rasped, "She hated lilacs. Said they smelled like death." Nothing else. He rose, left her with words heavy as stone. Martha knew some doors she was not yet allowed to open. In the days that followed, Elias let her ride out with him. The first time he said dryly, "You don't do much sitting here." "Come along." Martha climbed onto a scrawny mare while Elias led on his massive black steed. She followed through chest-high grass, watched him mend fences, brand calves, bury a dog bitten by a rattler. He spoke little, but when she wobbled in the saddle, he sighed and righted her reins. One evening near dusk, Elias opened the cellar, pulled out an old Winchester, cleaned it carefully, then placed it in her hands. "Hold tight. It'll knock you on your back first shot." Martha gripped it, heart pounding. The blast thundered, the kick throwing her into the dust. Shoulder burning, she surprised herself with a short, sharp laugh. Elias didn't smile, just hauled her up, reloaded, and set her again. The next time she held steady. Weeks of training left her bruised, fingers calloused, but her eyes grew bright. Once cowed into silence, she now aimed and fired without tremor. Elias offered no praise but no reproach either. His silence was its own acknowledgement. But peace never lasts long on the frontier. One night wind battered the fields, doors thudding in their frames. Martha was tidying the kitchen when hooves staggered to a stop outside. A man stumbled from his horse, reeking of whiskey. His coat was torn, eyes bloodshot, steps weaving. He hammered the door, bellowing, "Monroe! Come out, you bastard!" Elias stepped out, gaze cold as iron. Martha hovered behind the frame, heart racing. The drunk thrust a finger at him. "You think marrying hides your blood debt? This whole county knows who you killed, what you stole." The air froze. Martha held her breath. Elias said nothing, only stood, his eyes dark. The man spat, laughing harsh. "A blood debtor can't ever wash it clean." He swung back into the saddle and rode off, dust rising in the dark. Martha looked at Elias. For a heartbeat, she saw his broad shoulders quiver. He turned inside, set a revolver on the table, fist clenching till veins stood. The house sank into a silence heavier than ever, wind howling through the cracks. Martha didn't ask, but inside her, a fissure spread. The secrets she'd guessed at, the locked door, the nameless grave, had just been confirmed by a drunk's curse. Blood debt. And she understood now. Her marriage had bound her not just to safety, but to a darkness yet unspoken. Winter pulled back its claws, leaving ash hollow in the brittle dryness of early spring. Winds rolled down from the ridges, carrying the smell of damp soil, livestock dung, and the faint tang of ashes. Townsfolk crept back to their daily work, mending fences, mucking out stalls, reopening stalls shuttered through the snow. But the quiet in Ash Hollow wasn't peace. It was only the surface of a current waiting to break. One morning, when the broken church bell tolled its hollow clang, Martha walked into town beside Elias. On the weather-worn church door, someone had nailed a ragged sheet. The ink scrawled in jagged strokes, brutal as a knife slash. "The witch must burn. Only blood will cleanse ash." Hollow Martha froze, eyes locked on the words. Her throat turned raw, her fingers clutching the edge of her shawl. She'd heard curses like these before, but seeing them nailed to the church, meant to be sanctuary, felt like a death warrant read aloud for all to see. The crowd gathered close, murmuring while pretending to bow in prayer. No one tore the paper down. No one spoke in her defense. They stared at Martha as if she were the root of every misfortune. Failed crops, calves born weak, children coughing in their beds. Elias stepped forward. He did not bow his head. He didn't glance at the whisperers. He ripped the paper from the door, crushed it in his calloused fist, and flung it to the ground. The sharpness of that gesture silenced the square. He turned, took Martha's hand, and led her toward the black stallion tied at the rail. Hooves struck hard on stone as they crossed the square. Never had the people of Ash Hollow seen Elias Monroe walk beside anyone, least of all a woman branded witch. The sight itself was a slap across their pride. At the center of the square, Elias halted. He swung into the saddle, pulled Martha up before him, and steered the stallion straight into the churchyard. His gaze swept the crowd, sharp as a blade. His voice carried low and gravel rough, but each word struck like a hammer. If any one of you lays a hand on my wife again, I'll bury this town in the ground. Not a cough, not a protest, only the wind, lifting dust until it blurred the morning light. The old pastor, who'd been cowering inside, stepped out trembling, Bible shaking in his hands. Pages rattled like dry leaves. He tried to speak, but Elias's eyes fixed on him, and the words withered in his throat. For a heartbeat, even Scripture couldn't hide his cowardice. Martha sat before Elias on the saddle, heart pounding. Never had she seen a man face down an entire town. In her memory, men had only cursed, struck, or turned their backs. But Elias, cold, haunted as he was now wielding his name, the Black Bull, as a wall of flesh and fear around her. The crowd lowered their heads. A few young bucks muttered, but none dared step out. Mothers clutched their children, dragging them back into the shade of porches. One truth rang clear. With Elias Monroe, a threat was never bluff. Elias tugged the reins, turned his horse, and rode from the square. On her way home, Martha felt the townsfolk's stares. Hatred held down by fear, venom that would no longer strike in daylight, but lurk in shadows. She whispered, "Aren't you afraid?" Elias's gaze stayed fixed ahead. "I've lived my life in the fear of others. One more changes nothing." It wasn't comfort. It was truth. Yet Martha trembled. For the first time, she wasn't standing alone beneath the stones of Ash Hollow. For the first time, someone had said, "My wife," like a shield in a storm. But she knew every threat earns a debt, and Ash Hollow never forgave. That night, the ranch lay taut as wire. The moon hid behind cloud, wind rattling the shingles. Martha sat by the fire, while Elias smoked on the porch, staring at horizons only he seemed to see. The noise came at midnight. A dragging thump, hooves thrashing at the gate. Lantern in hand, Martha rushed out. Elias was already there, pistol drawn. What they saw froze them. A cow sprawled dead, throat slit deep, blood soaking the dirt black. Its eyes bulged wide, locked forever in terror. A message written in gore. Elias knelt, fingers brushing the cut. His voice fell heavy as stone. "He's back." "Who?" Martha whispered. "Jeb Crane." The name made the night colder. Elias rarely cracked, yet his eyes betrayed shadow. Slowly, as if coughing up thorns, he confessed, "I once rode with him. Young, stupid. We thought guns and fire could buy the world. We burned camps, stole stock, spilled blood. But I left. I wanted something else. He never stops. He never forgives." To Crane, betrayal is a sin never washed clean. Martha's stomach twisted. The rumors, the locked room, the nameless grave. They fit now, shaping Elias not as savior, but as part of the darkness itself. He turned, eyes hard. If you want to leave, go now. He won't spare you. Martha said nothing. In the lamplight, his shadow stretched, warped, like a beast in chains. She saw both the man who once reached for her hand in the dust and the outlaw steeped in blood. That night, Elias buried the cow beneath the orchard, each shovel strike heavy, final. Martha watched, knowing some things never stayed under earth. The next day, alone in the cellar, she found a chest hidden beneath rotten boards. Inside, a ledger, a broken knife, and a linen scrap stiff with old blood. At its edge, crude initials stitched by a child's hand. Her breath broke. This wasn't loot. It was proof of a life ended. Proof Elias had carried death home. Footsteps sounded above. Martha shoved the cloth back, slammed the lid, wiped her hands. Elias opened the door. Find anything? His tone was flat, dry. Just rotten wood. His eyes lingered on her, sharp as blades. Then he turned away, leaving smoke in his wake. Martha sagged against the wall. In the dark cellar, she knew Jeb Crane's shadow was only the beginning. For this very house hid stains of blood that had never dried. Late afternoon, the sky over Ash Hollow turned the color of tarnished copper. Clouds pressed low, choking the light. Martha was gathering kindling when a sharp, acrid scent caught on the wind. Not kitchen smoke, grass fire. The breeze shifted, carrying the crackle of flames, the bawling of cattle, the hard snap of gunfire. Elias was already in the saddle, eyes fixed on the ridge ablaze. He spurred forward. Martha ran after, her heartbeat like drums of war. At the rise, she froze. Flames roared across the fields, fences collapsing, cattle stumbling in terror. Through smoke rode dark riders laughing, firing into the air. Crane's gang. Elias charged in, pistol blazing. One outlaw dropped, another horse reared, but the odds were too great. 5, 6 figures circled in the haze. A rifle cracked. Elias tumbled from his horse, shoulder ripped red. He rose once, fired, then collapsed. The wind shifted, beating down the blaze, leaving black ruin and the stench of flesh. Crane's gang vanished as suddenly as they came. Martha ran to Elias, lifted him with trembling arms. His breath rasped. Go. Leave me. I won't, she answered, voice steadier than she believed. That night, the wind howled like wolves. Martha bound his wound, burned bloody rags to ash. Elias burned with fever, muttering Crane's name. Martha kept vigil, rifle heavy across her lap, every hoofbeat in the dark setting her teeth on edge. At dawn, pale light revealed ruin, fields scorched, cattle dead, fences stumps of charcoal. They would return. Elias could no longer hold a gun. Waiting meant death. She laid her palm to his brow, then strapped on her shawl, knife at her hip, Winchester across her back. She packed hard bread and stepped into the road marked with hoofprints and blood. Smoke lingered, drawing her toward the Carrion Gorge, a place whispered where blood once ran like rivers. She did not look back. The canyon loomed, red rock carved deep into earth. Night fell thick as ink. Below, campfires sputtered, laughter rising with the stench of liquor and meat. Martha lay flat on the ridge, eyes cold as steel. She slid her knife free. The first guard slumped with a bottle at his feet. One swift slash, he stiffened, then stilled. She dragged him into brush, silent. The second stumbled from the latrine. Her blade slid deep, his groans smothered in her palm. Hot blood spilled over her fingers. Then a shot split the night. The camp erupted. Firelight revealed her slight figure, rifle raised. She fired. One outlaw dropped. Another spun in agony. Horses screamed, men shouted. And then he came. Jeb Crane. Scarred face, eyes burning, coat of ragged fur. He smiled through the smoke. Not as pretty as I pictured. But those eyes, they're his. The traitor's Elias isn't yours, Martha said, rifle steady. Crane spat. Elias? He was me. Worse than me, she fired. Her bullet tore his coat. He fired back, dirt exploding at her feet. Their guns fell aside, knives flashing. His fists struck like hammers. Blood stung her eyes. She drove her blade into his arm. He roared, hurled her to the dirt. Looming, he laughed low. Your savior buried families for cattle. He is sin, no better than me. Martha clenched her teeth, thrust upward. Her knife plunged beneath his ribs. Crane's howl split the canyon. His grip crushed her throat, but she twisted the blade, ripped it free. Blood fountained. He staggered, dropped to his knees, yet still he laughed, rasping. Elias was worse than me. Then he fell. Shaking, drenched in red, Martha struck a match. Oil ignited, flames roaring skyward. Tents, maps, bodies, all consumed. The gorge glowed like a furnace, fire swallowing Crane's corpse. Martha stood amidst the blaze, fire mirrored in her eyes. Then she turned, rifle on her back, bloodied knife warm in her grip. She walked into the night, leaving the carrion gorge howling behind her. Dawn spread pale silver light over Ash Hollow, the wind sweeping across fields still scarred by fire. On the dirt road home, Martha staggered forward, her dress in tatters, blood stiff on her shoulder, bare feet cut and bleeding. Smoke clung to her hair, Crane's last rasp echoing in her ears. Elias was worse than me. At last, the ranch roofline appeared. Her vision dimmed. She collapsed on the porch. Elias, limping from his own wounds, caught her before she struck the ground. He carried her inside, washed her with rainwater, and kept vigil for 3 nights until she finally stirred. You came back, he whispered. His eyes, no longer hard, trembled with fear of losing her. Then he confessed, voice rough as stone. I burned, I killed, I stole more than Crane ever did. But I walked away the day I saw you bleed. I knew I couldn't live the same again. Martha turned to the orchard, swaying in the wind. I won't forgive you, Elias. No one can forgive what you've done. He only nodded, silent. Then she added, steady, but I won't leave. This land isn't just yours anymore. It's ours. I bled for it too, for years. Elias had lived like a beast under guilt. Her words cut deep, pain and release in one. He was not forgiven, but he was no longer alone. That night they sat together on the porch, whiskey in hand, moonlight silvering the blackened fields. Forgiveness would never come, but survival together, that was enough to keep pain at bay. Time in Ash Hollow dripped slow as sand. From then on, life quieted. No threats on the church door, no stones thrown. Fear replaced contempt, and silence became their shield. One autumn afternoon, a girl appeared at the ranch gate, thin, bruised, hollow-eyed. Martha asked nothing, only offered porridge and a bed by the fire. Some pains needed no words. Just as Elias had once pulled her from the crowd, Martha pulled this girl into her own life. Martha taught her to ride, to cut rabbit, to tie rope. At first her hands trembled, but soon her gaze steadied, her fingers hardened. Martha saw herself reflected in every movement. Meanwhile, Elias weakened. His wound never healed and years of guilt bent him low. Each morning he sat on the porch, watching in silence as Martha and the girl worked the yard. One golden afternoon he rasped, "When I go, lay me here, under this tree." She nodded, wordless. Seasons passed. Elias died quietly in his sleep. Martha and the girl buried him beneath the apple tree, carving only a bull's head into the stone. No townfolk came. It did not matter. Elias belonged to the land now. From then on, 2 remained, One older, one younger, living like mirrors of each other. Dawn rides, red dusk returns. Martha passed down every lesson learned in blood and fire. How to read the clouds, how to hide a knife, how to fire a rifle with breath alone. One day the girl found a chest hidden under rotted boards. Inside lay Elias's journal, pages of crimes. Villages burned, cattle stolen, lives taken. The girl looked to Martha in fear. For a moment Martha thought to burn it, but her hand froze. No, it must remain. Not for honor, not for forgiveness, but as proof. A warning that the land itself was built on blood. She closed the book. Remember this, she told the girl. We live by this land. And this land remembers everything. At last, one evening, they stood on the porch together, rifles in hand, sunset fire across their faces. The orchard whispered, Elias's grave lay quiet beneath the tree. No town voices, no gangs. Only two figures guarding a land bought with fire, blood, and resolve. In that moment, Martha knew she left the girl not lullabies, but a rifle, a stretch of earth, and a book of shadows. Not a burden, but the truth. A truth the future must carry. Beneath the western sky, Martha's story did not close with gun smoke, but with endurance. Two figures on a porch, holding fast against silence. From a widow cast out by her town, she became the keeper of land, raising a home from blood, tears, and unbroken will. Elias was gone. Scars remained. Yet the orchard still blossomed, and another generation carried the rifle forward. Perhaps this is what every soul longs for. To be seen, to have a piece of earth to call home, and someone to stand beside us until the end. If this tale touched your heart, share your thoughts below. Do you believe Martha ever truly found peace? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, so together we can keep telling the stories of the Wild West that still echo in our hearts.